Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick with me? Famous scenes with drama queens and heroes acting out there on a silver screen. Come grab a seat, the popcorn is on me.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
So, Thomas, on today's show, we've got villains that we used to know of as heroes. We've got superheroes. We've got a World War II battle, and we might even be able to visit a toy store with toys we've known for decades. This is Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here with Thomas Manning. How are you, bud?
Oh, fantastic. Happy to be here. And you might be thinking, Thomas, why did you put on a button-up shirt for today's show? That is like so far beyond what you normally do. And it's actually not because I wanted to impress anybody. It's a lot more gruesome than that. So what's happened is I wore these clothes to work today. It is 95 degrees and these clothes are now permanently grafted to my skin. The sun has melted them into my epidermis. So if you ever see me out and about, I mean, this is just going to be my skin from now on. So, but just wanted to provide a little bit of context for our viewers so they aren't really thrown off by me going above and beyond, because I didn't. It's the way the universe worked out today.
Yeah. You rarely go above and beyond on anything. So I think our viewers have come to expect that of you. So it is good to see you, man. And we're going to try to cram quite a bit in today's show. We got a lot we could talk about. I don't know how much we'll get to, but we will definitely offer what we can. Well, opening weekend for Supergirl, Thomas, did not turn out from a box office standpoint like DC was hoping. Last year we had Superman. Supergirl was introduced at the tail end of that, and so we knew this was a different kind of Supergirl. And as we've been able to see from the trailers leading up to this, we knew this was going to be a much darker take on a Supergirl film than we've ever seen before.
Yeah. And I went into this film, both you and I did, with pretty strong expectations. And then we heard some mixed reactions and mixed buzz after the first round of reviews. So we kind of tempered those expectations, but still went in with an open mind, hoping to have a good time. And you know what? I think we both had a good time. And some of the conversation around this film has been mind-numbing. People saying that there are aspects of this movie that is worse than they've ever seen in any comic book movie, and I just think that is very unfair to say. And of course, we all have our own ways of arriving at our opinions on movies, but I do think there has been some hyperbolic conversation around this film, and I think what I want to talk about, the aspects that worked for me first, is the exploration of the humanity of Supergirl as played by Millie Alcock. And we look at the Superman played by David Cornsweet in James Gunn's film last year. That version of Superman, his humanity came from growing up as a human on a Kansas farm. I mean, that was all he ever knew as he arrived to Earth as a child. But on the flip side of that, this Supergirl, her humanity comes from not really having a home. Superman has a home, which is Canvas, and that's all he's ever known. But Supergirl, her original home of Krypton, she was born on Krypton after it collapsed. So essentially there was a little slice of Krypton still floating out in space. And, so not only was that a traumatic environment for her to grow up in, but then after that, over the years, we come to find out there's even more tragic backstory with things that happen with her family. And so, she's gone through multiple stages of just layers upon layers of family and cultural trauma. And in order to make herself feel human, which, is something that I think she kind of feels jealous of her cousin for the way that he feels human, she goes to planets with the red suns because she doesn't get the yellow sun power that kind of gives her the superhuman abilities. And she goes to these planets and just parties and gets drunk, and she's abusing herself to make herself feel human. And she's abusing and numbing herself at the same time, which is a really terrible cycle. Um, and I think that is a very fascinating emotional premise for a character. There are themes, ideas that we keep coming back to, like for a hero, you don't have to be nice and perfect. Sometimes life is going to be messy, but what you can do is make the choice to always lead with compassion rather than being consumed by hatred and bitterness. So when this film is focusing on those character aspects, that is that is certainly what did work for me as far as this film goes.
Yeah, and I thought also I agree with you on those elements. I thought those elements were well done, and it gave us this different take, one that we've not seen on screen before in a standalone Supergirl. Also, I thought the casting was really solid, kind of across the board. I thought that that Millie was wonderful when I first heard she was cast for this. I'm like, yeah, I can see that. And then when I again saw her teased in the cameo basically in Superman, and then the trailers, I said, yeah, I think we've got something here, and I still think we do. I think that I'm thinking, I hope that we're going to see more from her character in some other stories. This particular film, that that a lot of people said, wow, it's pretty ambitious to try to bring this to the screen. And I think that's part of what people are talking about as well. And I thought it was really, dark for sure, as you mentioned, because it's not just the Supergirl story, but there's also another young girl who sees her family, her entire family, killed in front of her, and she basically wants to go on a revenge tour. And the two of them end up having to come together.
Supergirl sees herself in what this girl has experienced in many aspects, and wants to guide her, or is kind of a reluctant guide and a reluctant mentor, and wants her to not make the same mistakes that she's made.
Yep. So I thought some of the themes in this were really strong, and I throughout the film, those were some of the high points for me. The casting, as I mentioned, other than, Jason Momoa, his casting as Lobo was fine, but the character of Lobo in this film did not provide any aspects for me that I thought furthered the story. I found that it was a distraction, and it was a way that, hey, let's get Momoa in here and let's get another name. But I didn't feel that it had any real power to making the story go any further for me.
I feel like if this was like the first time that anybody had seen Jason Momoa, they would have been like, wow, what a casting decision. But we've been seeing Momoa play these characters for 15 years now, and now it just is kind of like, a blunt sword. It doesn't really have any sort of impact, or at least for me as an audience member. And I think you could have removed that character entirely, and I'm pretty sure all the other characters would have realize their arcs in their own way without his influence, without his impact on the story. So yeah, and listen, I like Jason Momoa as an actor. No, this is nothing against him, and really nothing against his performance either, but it just felt a little bit unnecessary to include him in the way that he was.
Yeah, it honestly just kind of felt shoehorned in to this film. The film itself was hour 50 minutes or so. And it actually felt longer to me, Thomas. I think that you could have trimmed this, and if this had been cut down to a solid 90 minutes, I think it actually would have been a much stronger film for me. I thought there were some really strong action sequences, but at the same time, there were others that the screen felt just kind of muddied. And so I thought balance was off a little bit in this film.
Yeah, I think the third act kind of commits every stereotypical sin of comic book movies over the past 15 years. Like, I think that's been one of the criticisms that we've had for even some of the really good superhero films. The third act is always straight into this just kind of sludge territory of, okay, there's just stuff going on that is uninteresting in the way that it's portrayed. It is not dynamic, and it's hard to emotionally connect with that. And I do think we kind of run into a little bit of that when the way that the third act plays out here. But I do think that the first two acts, I was much more on board with some of the action there, and I think some of the more like close quarter action sequences, I found those to be more well constructed than some of the grander sequences, because they really leaned heavily into the CGI and the green screen, which can once again be done well, but I don't think it was in certain regards here.
The film does lean into grief. It leans into revenge. It leans into searching for yourself, and trying to find your place in the world where you just don't quite fit. And we saw that with two of these characters in this film. A lot of needle drops in this film, Thomas, which you and I both always appreciate some good needle drops. And going into this, there were comparisons. A mixed comparison between Guardians meets Fury Road, and I think those are honestly spot on. But I think those two films are much stronger films than this one. So the comparisons, while the comparisons are there, those films as standalones are much stronger.
Yeah, those comparisons are mostly just in terms of certain ideas, certain visual elements, but not really as a quality comparison. But that's not to say that Supergirl is a bad film that we don't recommend. I would say I actually would be comfortable recommending this to somebody. And I think you and I settled on about a B- grade for this one.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. B-. It's a film I'm glad I saw. It's not one I'm going to be rushing back to and watching multiple times like you and I have for Disclosure Day, for example. We both seen that multiple times. I'd love to get my hands on a cut of this movie, and I can pull the old Star Wars Thomas edition of that when he was like 5 years old, 3 years old, and edit this movie down. If I could do that, I think we'd have something that I would probably watch over and over and over again. I do think it's worth the watch. I think we're going to be seeing more of Supergirl. I just think that it was unfulfilled potential ultimately, and it's not a bad film. It's a bit better than average. So B- is where we're settling. Any final thoughts or comments you want to make sure you share?
In some respects, I wonder if James Gunn himself should have just directed this too. It was directed by Craig Gillespie, who I think did a fine job in some respects, but I couldn't help but feeling like, this James Gunn, rather than just, I know he's the president and the pretty much president of DC now, and it's hard for him to just have his hands on everything, but there were certain things that were attempted that felt like it would have been 100 times better if James Gunn was the one actually doing them.
Yeah, I will agree with you. I definitely felt that his fingerprints were slightly on it. I mean, there were elements of it that I'm like, okay, that feels Gunn-esque, but not across the board. And I think the places where it did feel like it was a James Gunn type thing, that's where it worked best for me. So, yep. All right. Any final thoughts before we go to the break? Didn't expect to spend this much time, but really a lot to unpack with this one.
Yeah, I think, well, since you mentioned Disclosure Day real quick, just a real quick 1 minute on Disclosure Day or 30 seconds on Disclosure Day. If you're going to go watch a movie in a movie theater, treat it like a movie theater where there are other people around you, because, at the time of recording this, we went to go see Disclosure Day for a third time, recently, or should have been a third time. My father, he got through it, but I had to get up and leave because we had some, certain parties in the theater were uninterested in paying respect to their fellow audience members. So, for anybody out there, I think that is something that we all need to be reminded of here and there.
Absolutely. And I will say that I plan to see Disclosure Day for a fourth time before it leaves theaters. And so it's still still resonates with me as the best film of the summer so far. We're going to take a quick intermission. We're going to come back, and I don't know what we're going to get to. We'll just have to wait and see. So stick around after this quick intermission. We're back on C19 TV. Meet me at the movies.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a
Hi, I'm Tim Foster, your host for Blue and Bold Monthly right here on C19 TV. Get to know the coaches and student athletes of Cleveland Community College Athletics on Blue and Bold. We go in depth as we discuss cross country, track and field, volleyball, baseball, men and women's basketball, and softball. Catch Blue and Bold airing on C19 TV and online at c19.tv.
As Cleveland County's premier event facility, LeGrand Center is the ideal location for any event. The LeGrand Center is located 45 minutes west of Charlotte, 45 minutes north of Spartanburg, and just a little over an hour east of Asheville. Whether you're a small business looking for a place for an off-site meeting or a bride looking for that special location for her wedding, LeGrand Center is the perfect place for you.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a
Welcome back to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here with Thomas Manning, talking cinema. Well, Thomas, before the break, we gave our take on Supergirl that is still in theaters. We gave that a B-, and considering the money it's not making that they had hoped for, I want to encourage audiences, if it's a film you want to check out in theaters, to do that in the next couple of weeks, because the screens are going to be less and less for this film, the way summer works for sure. Well, Thomas, I tell you, one film that's probably going to be hanging around for a while is Toy Story 5. This is a franchise that's 3 decades old, and they keep finding ways to tell new stories. And with Toy Story 5, I really wasn't excited about it other than it was a Toy Story film, but I feel like I've seen so much of this. I don't know that I really care enough, but I'm going to check it out. Well, there was definitely more story to be told with Jesse's story in Toy Story 5.
Yeah, and I really adored how they built this film around Jesse, who was kind of sidelined in the fourth film, where the fourth film was definitely Woody's movie. And this is Jesse's story, and it's kind of building on things that some clues of context that had been laid in the seeds back in 1999 in Toy Story 2, which I think is one of the things that really plays into the success of this series as a whole, is just the amount of time over the years that we have spent with these characters as we've grown older ourselves. And I think what they did, the hook for this film, the central conflict of the existentialism of the toys as technologies being introduced to their homes, and, with kids not wanting to play with their actual toys, they want to play with they're not actually iPads, but they're an iPad-like tech force. And so I think that was fascinating, but I also got the feeling that some of that idea wasn't quite fleshed out to the extent that I would have liked it to. So I think when it was really about the Jesse arc is when this film was, really clicking on all cylinders. But when it was kind of about the technology versus the toys in that relationship, I do think that's where the territory got a little bit muddy and it didn't quite all click for me.
I will say that these films, they build on the nostalgia factor. So you have people who have grown up watching this, who are, at one point took their children to see them. Now they're taking their grandchildren to see them. And I think from a character standpoint and a relationship standpoint that these films have been able to create with us, an audience, I think that's pretty fascinating to be able to continue to do it and do it in a way that's still drawing people to the box office. This movie is making tons of money. It's going to end up being probably one of the biggest, films of the year from a box office standpoint. It does a few things different. We get to see the imagination of the children come to life and when their imagination comes to life, when they're playing with the toys, the animation that we are seeing as an audience on screen looks different. And I really did appreciate that take. I think that worked really well. And I'm with you though. I think when you're getting the kind of the backstory and getting to spend time with the characters, that spoke to me a whole lot more. There was one character that was cyberbullying, and it was Lily, and it just happened. Lily was a character that was a screen that a kid was being drawn to, and so it had elements of things that kids go through. Kids trying to connect with, create friends. But I think at times they were trying too hard, and that's where I was wondering, okay, is this trying to reach children? Is it trying to reach the adults? And I think it did have a difficult time straddling that line at times. I didn't feel so much with the other ones. I felt the other ones, even though they had adult themes, I felt it found this nice balance of being able to do both.
And I think maybe where the slight disconnect comes in is the first 3 Toy Story films, a crucial part of what made them so successful was that the audience literally aged at the same rate as the main character, Andy, or the main child character. You had like an 11-year gap between Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3. And within that 11 years that we don't see Andy grows up, and in Toy Story 3 he's about to go off to college, and as the send off and the finale of Toy Story 3 is, I still think, one of the most emotionally effective conclusions to any trilogy that we've ever seen, and animated or otherwise. And that's it's a coming of age tale about leaving behind a part of your childhood, but also knowing that some of those parts of your childhood are always going to be with you no matter what. They're always going to be within, who you are as an individual. But you look at the main child character in Toy Story 4 and 5, Bonnie, who is, a very sweet character. And I think there have been some aspects of, her interaction with the world, her interaction with the toys that has been very moving, but it's been a different dynamic because she has not grown up with the audience. She was introduced at the end of Toy Story 3, which was 15 years ago, but she's ostensibly like the same age that she was then now in Toy Story 5. So I do think there's a little bit that kind of limits the emotional potential of how the audience could connect with her. But at the same time, I don't know if children are going to feel that way at all. And I think that might just be a disconnect between, older viewers like you and I. I do think kids who are watching this at, 5, 6, 7 years old, they're probably not going to be thinking about that at all.
I think you're right. And I think they are the ones that are wanting to go back and see this again. Not so much for me. But for Toy Story 3, I saw that one multiple times because it honestly spoke to me in a lot of ways. And I think you're right, because you grew up, and it was almost as if I was watching you grow up as some of the characters within that. So Toy Story 3, absolutely on my list. When I think back, I'm like, man, that's still probably to me the best of the franchise. And that's hard to say when you're talking about a third one. This one, I'll be honest with you, Thomas, I'm probably going to forget about this one. It's one of those that's not going to stick with me. It's not going to stay with me. A few years down the road, I'm probably going to go, okay, what happened in Toy Story 5? I'm going to have to go back and look at my notes.
Yeah, and also it was really missing the Forky factor here. I think Tony Hill as Forky in Toy Story 4 was one of my favorite animated characters in recent memory, and he was kind of sidelined here, which obviously that's going to happen with any of these new characters they introduce, and sometimes they got to take a back seat. But I think if you're going to really explore existentialism, which Toy Story 4 did in its own sense with the character of Forky, and then this with the characters worrying about being replaced by technology, I feel like they had a gold mine on their hands with Tony Hale as Forky, and they could have explored him a little bit more and folded him a little bit more into this narrative, and I felt like that was a missed opportunity.
I will say the best part of this movie to me was Conan O'Brien.
Yes, I'm so glad that you call that on.
And we just got like a minute left, Thomas. But Conan O'Brien, his character was wonderful and was fun. And every time that character was on screen, I found myself laughing.
Yeah, and if you ever were going to have a voice actor who was going to play a potty training toy, but not be embarrassed by it whatsoever, and actually put some genuine passion and love into this character, then yeah, it's going to be Conan O'Brien. And he's going to be on my year-end list when we talk about like best voice performances. He even gets a segment in this film where there is an animated model that takes after his iconic orange hair. So be on the lookout for that.
Absolutely. Well, we did not get through all that we had hoped for on today's show. What is your rating, Thomas, for Toy Story 5?
I'm fine giving Toy Story 5 a B+, which feels like we didn't felt like we were leaning slightly negatively on this, but I think that just speaks to the overall quality of the Toy Story films, that we think this is one of the weaker ones, and it's still a strong B+ that we would recommend to families.
Yeah, and for me, I'm gonna sit with a B. So I'm a little lower than you, but still good film. And families are enjoying it. And it's continuing to do well at the box office. So Toy Story 5 still in theaters. And if you get a chance to check out some films under the radar, Thomas, we want to recommend, we're not going to give reviews because we don't have time, but Lucky Strike, our friend Rod Lurie has a World War II film with Scott Eastwood. Lucky Strike is the name of that one. That's a recommendation. And your rating for that, Thomas, we'll give a quick rating for it.
Yeah, B+ for Lucky Strike. I think a great use of Scott Eastwood.
Yeah, right there with you, B+ for Lucky Strike. And also The Death of Robin Hood in limited theaters with Hugh Jackman and also Jodie Comer. Oh my gosh, she was incredible in this film. And this is one this is not the Robin Hood your daddy told you about. We'll just say that. What is your rating for Death of Robin Hood, Thomas?
I give a B+, Death of Robin Hood as well. I think we've had 3 straight B+ here. And don't take your kids after Toy Story 5 to see a Death of Robin Hood, because they will not enjoy that.
No, absolutely. That is our recommendation for the week right here on Meet Me at the Movies. We appreciate you spending time with us as always. And thanks again to Tim and everybody, the entire cast and crew. Thanks for helping to make this show possible. Until next time, for Thomas Manning, I'm Noel T. Manning II, and for this week, that's a wrap.
Many films to view until we meet again. Next time we see you, we'll gladly fill you in. We'll tell about the happy and the sad ones. We'll talk about the good ones and the bad ones. Many films to view till we meet again.